continues. This ball club has been amazing all season long.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a special emergency holy shit podcast. You crazy motherfuckers. The Mariners. I don't think anybody really realizes what these last 24 hours really happened. It was the craziest thing. And I know that Rooftop, you'll agree with this. The craziest thing is 24 hours ago, there was a lynch mob for Jerry DiPoto's head. And on a dime, everybody wakes up to the news that Randy Arozarena is now a Seattle Mariner, and people are like, huh, okay. And it's funny because you go from the highest of extremes of being down in the dumps because the Mariners get swept by the Angels, and then all of a sudden, Randy Arozarena. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Huh. So I guess they're not dead yet. Interesting. Dude, this has been the funniest 24 hours, just watching the meltdowns on social media. And then all of a sudden it's 24 hours later, they're like, oh.
And to top it off, right as we're about to start our show,
yes,
another trade happens where the Mariners traded for relief specialist Yimi Garcia from the Blue Jays. And all it cost was a struggling Jonathan Clase.
Yes. The Mariners do send Jonathan Clase to the Toronto Blue Jays for Yimi Garcia. And the wild thing is that the Mariners are adding payroll. Yeah, even in the Randy Arozarena deal, it wasn't like they sent Ryan Stanek along to kind of offset some of that money. The Mariners are taking swings, and they're not afraid to add payroll. Yimi Garcia is on a 2-year deal that's going to pay him $6 million a year, which, for a high leverage arm like Yimi Garcia, it's actually kind of a steal. And if you guys understand stats, you'll know that Yimi Garcia is going to play a huge role in this Mariner bullpen. We're still trying to figure out what's going on with Gregory Santos, but if everything is fine, you got 3 guys at the back end of that bullpen where now you have a collection of guys like Snyder in both. And guys that can figure out the 6th and 7th inning, the 6th inning. But now all of a sudden this bullpen looks a little bit better, and the Mariners have had a very good active 12 hours in the trade market. Certainly in also setting the market as well too. That Randy Arozarena deal, has, it's going to be interesting to see how the dominoes fall after this. But your first initial reaction, let's not bury the lead. Let's talk about this. Your first initial reaction when you first heard that Randy Arozarena is a Seattle Mariner, your first thoughts?
First, I was absolutely shocked. I was just reading all the tweets. I was actually at my cousin's house. We were playing NBA 2K because he really wanted to play it. But that's besides the point. When I saw it, I go, okay, so they made a deal. How much they gave up? They gave up not even any of the top 10 prospects. So that made me feel happy. But then I went back to reality within a few seconds going, okay, that's a great start, but let's see more, because I don't want this to be where Mariners say, okay, Randy Arozarena is enough. It's clearly not enough. Before the Garcia trade, I was hoping the Mariners can find someone in the bullpen, which is an absolute need because the bullpen is just not what it was in 2023. It's giving me the glimpse of 97 now. It's not that bad, but they have some tendencies to play like them from time to time.
Hey man,
and I still would like to see one more bat.
Yeah, don't shit on the 97 bullpen. Mike Timlin was awesome. Not so.
What about Norm Charlton and 7 ERA?
Okay, well,
and his haircut. You got a nice haircut too.
Yeah, don't shit on the 97 bullpen. But no, you're absolutely right. And the thing that you're absolutely right. That was something that I think was on a lot of Mariners fans' mind was, is this going to be it? This cannot just be Randy Arozarena, and then it's like, okay, well, we tried, and no. And then we heard leaks from Ken Rosenthal and a couple other guys around the league saying that the Mariners are still going to be very active, even with the Randy Arozarena deal. And now all of a sudden we hear that we get Yimi Garcia for, essentially a bag of balls. No disrespect to Jonathan Clase, but the reality is that, Clase's had a few cups of coffee, and he's exactly the type of prospect that you're going to move, because the reality is, especially now with Arozarena in the fold, Julio is going to be coming back, and of course, same thing with Dom Canzone. So you still have Luke Raley and Mitch Haniger, and you're going to get Canzone back. So you have your fourth outfield position already taken care of. And the way that the Mariners draft and develop, they're going to be able to get a new outfielder in the fold in the minors. And it's not like they can't just sign a veteran free agent to sit in AAA Tacoma and play some outfield. He's the type of prospect that gets moved in a deal like this for a high leverage arm. And I know that you were big on bringing back Paul Sewald, but this seems like it's a little bit better. And I don't think the Arizona Diamondbacks were going to be in a position to get, to trade Paul Sewald back, because they're not really in a position of rebuilding anyway. So to me, that always never made sense. But, it's nice that the Toronto Blue Jays are potentially pulling the plug on it, because it benefits us. And who knows, maybe there will be another Blue Jay coming across the wire, landing in a Mariners uniform within the scope of the next 4 days. But when I first heard Randy Arozarena was a Seattle Mariner, my first initial thought was, who did we give up?
That's my first initial thought too. Like, okay, who do we give up? And if it was like all those prospects, I'd be like, dang, but we'll do what we have to do. But then when we saw Aiden Smith,
yeah, and I was like, I keep seeing, I hate to say this, man, I keep hearing dumb Mariner fans thinking that that we fleeced the Tampa Bay Rays. And I was like, first and foremost, Tampa never gets fleeced, number one. And number two, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Aiden Smith, I liked Aiden Smith, and I liked Brody Hopkins. Now, granted, yeah, they were an A-ball, but I had Aiden Smith high on my prospects list. I actually had him like at number 8, and I had Brody Hopkins like at 12, 13 in that area. As a matter of fact, I actually had Brody Hopkins at the top of my starting pitching list as far as prospects. Like, he's that legit. And granted, he still has to mature. But that being said, it's very conceivable, like a dude like Brody Hopkins is going to be in the big leagues within 2 years. And Aiden Smith, he's going to a very good organization that knows how to develop outfielders, and it's not out of the realm of possibility to think that Aiden Smith is also going to crack the big leagues within a couple of years as well too. And so this has the potential for Tampa Bay, at least. These aren't wild card prospects either, and they get a player to be named later. So we have no idea who that player is going back at a later date. The reality is Jerry DiPoto did not want to trade Aiden Smith and Brody Hopkins. He really didn't. But he also recognized where the team currently is right now, which is still in the thick of the division race. And he understands that his offense is far beyond anemic. This was something that they had to do, and Jerry had to pull the plug. I had to pull the trigger on this one, and good for him too, because we know how risk averse Jerry DiPoto is when it comes to things like this. He does not like to trade away prospects, especially prospects that he likes. But kudos to Jerry DiPoto, because this was something that I had been calling on for a month now, doing things that are required that make you uncomfortable in order to get better now. And he certainly did that with Randy Arozarena.
The only thing I'm nervous about is I'm really curious who in the player to be named later is, because I heard in the rules, because I read the rule book about how player to be named laters work. The Mariners, because Blue Jays maybe wanted more time to evaluate which prospects they have, so the Mariners gave them like, well, here's the 5 to 10 to look at, and I believe in that 5 to 10, the Mariners cannot trade any of those 5 to 10 prospects until the Blue Jays make that choice. And we've had it happen before. The most notable last time the Mariners had a player to be named later trade was the Dave Hollins trade, where initially that was a player to be named later, and that turned out to be David Ortiz. So I wonder if anyone in that pool, if that 5 to 10, like, was the names of Cole Young, Harry Ford, Laz Montez in there, or was it like a mid-level, like a Ty P, or was it any of the low tier?
I would probably think it's going to be a low tier. As far as I know, that the Mariners are actually in control of the prospect that's going to go back as the player to be named later. Like the frame of the deal is like Tampa Bay probably said, hey, listen, we understand that, Randy Arozarena is not necessarily on the level of a guy like Cole Emerson or maybe even Cole Young, but he's still worth Aiden Smith and Brody Hopkins. So if you give us a player to be named later, and I think that's how the rule goes. I think the Mariners get to choose who's going to be that within a frame of a certain
6 month period.
Yeah. And it's also a certain box of prospects that are going to be agreeable, to Tampa Bay. And I would probably assume that it's going to be probably a guy who's going to be an A-ball, maybe even high A, someone who's probably an Everett. Maybe a double A guy. It just depends. And we're obviously going to find out about it. But, I didn't think the Mariners got fleeced. I didn't think Tampa Bay got fleeced. I think this was a strength for strength trade, where the Mariners used the strength, which was their farm system, and then, got a guy who has a very good track record. Now, I don't think that we're going to see 2020 bubble Randy Arozarena ever again, but it's not unconceivable to think that he's going to be a WRC plus of 130 versus lefties, and then maybe a 105, 110 versus righties. I don't think he's going to be hitting anything over 270, but that being said, he's still going to be able to provide exactly what you traded him for, which is to use both gaps, hit home runs, get on base, but also pair him up with Julio Rodriguez. And of course, Julio and Randy are very good friends. So this is something that's going to potentially have a trickle-down effect with Julio Rodriguez. And now the Mariners finally have that 1-2 punch in that lineup that they just have been sorely needing for the last year and a half.
My thing is, the only concerns I have about Arozarena, he did have a struggling start, but he did pick it up. And when he was struggling, and his stat lines actually look very similar to Dom Canzone right now, but that's only because he had a bad start. But the things that make it encouraging is he has been playing well since the end of May. He does steal bases well, and he does play well at T-Mobile Park. Because I think he was part of the huge slaughter when the Mariners were defeated by Tampa Bay. It was that home opener against Tampa Bay when Tom Murphy hit a home run to give the Mariners a 4-0 lead, and the bullpen completely just collapsed really badly. And I think Arozarena was one of those home run hitters. And I think it was off of Mike Ford. I think Arozarena hit a home run off of Mike Ford.
Speaking about his production at T-Mobile Park, he's only had 45 career at-bats at T-Mobile Park, and I realize that's a small sample size, but he's hitting 289, 333, slugging 511 with an 844 OPS, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs. And that matters. It's not just necessarily a small sample size, but you're absolutely right. Over the course of the last 30 games, Randy Arozarena has literally turned his season around. And I have some issues too, because Arozarena is not exactly the greatest defender of the world. But that being said, man, is he serviceable? 100%. In an outfield corner, 100% he's serviceable. That's the first thing. The second thing is that he's coming into this situation red hot. I mean, that's part of the reason why the Mariners did this trade, because they recognize that not only has he turned around the season, but in the course of the last 3-4 weeks, he's been literally red hot. I guess my problem is, number one, will Scott Service just leave him alone and let him do his thing?
Yes, that's my other feeling is
Yeah, because the last thing I would like to see is we trade for a bat like Arozarena, and then all of a sudden Scott Service neuters him by saying, "Hey, watch out for slider low in the way." As a matter of fact, be on the lookout for that, and we're gonna try to take away we're gonna try to take away what you do well, which is fastball middle, fastball in, and try to neuter your pull side power, because they 100% did that to Julio.
And that's what I'm concerned about. But the one thing that we will see is we'll see a differential between the coaching of the Tampa Bay Rays and the Seattle Mariners. And that will give us another good idea. That will give everyone else a good idea whether Scott Service is a good fit as a manager going forward. Because now we have YouTubers, especially the ones that were the Scott Service fans. Some are saying, "Oh, is it time to get rid of Scott Service? Maybe it's not working." And I was like, I literally told you guys this like two years ago, and you guys cut me off.
Well, I knew eventually this conversation was going to steer in this direction, because you and I can't do any type of show without Scott Service's name being brought up, and it's a legit concern, especially with getting a bat of a magnitude of a Randy Arozarena, and it's like you just gotta let him show up, and the best way to make him comfortable is just to let him do his thing. And if he strikes out every once in a while, then he strikes out. It is what it is. The other problem that I have with this is for the first week until Julio comes back, there's not going to be much lineup protection for him, right? So the one thing I'm worried about is pressure, like putting pressure on his shoulders right out of the gate, because, well, quite frankly, he's going to be our only legit bat in this lineup until Julio gets back. So I'm curious about how that's going to play out. But in regards to Scott Service, I still don't think this lets either Jerry DiPoto or Scott Service off the hook, because there is still a very good possibility that it still continues to go south. And if it goes south and the slide continues with all this good starting pitching, then it's a wrap. It's a done deal. This also does not even remotely get Jerry DiPoto off the hook. The only way that both of them get off the hook is if they get into the playoffs and make a deep run, and that is it. That is the only way that they are off the hook. And would you even conceive of having them back in 2025? I just think at this point in time that the first two trades, very good trades, man. Randy Arozarena, I love it. It was necessary. And Yimi Garcia is going to help this bullpen. I hate the fact that they brought up Eduardo Bazardo today.
I hate it too. I was very baffled by it.
Bazardo is absolute trash, and I don't understand why they keep continuing giving him opportunities in this bullpen when he's shown time and time again that he is not up to even being a situational reliever for this team. But it is what it is. So now you have Yimi Garcia, who's probably going to be in Seattle's bullpen by tomorrow. The same with
Arozarena.
Arozarena. So I just would like. I would just like to get everybody back healthy, and I just kind of want to see how this team is going to play. I have a very good feeling that this is actually going to return the good vibes, because I've said this time and time again, and I've been in locker rooms, and I understand when you get new players in, it does something to the atmosphere. Okay, because especially when you consider what the Mariners have gone through in the last month, okay, it has been a continuous slide to the point where those vibes sometimes get stale. And there is a very good potential that players are going to start blaming each other. Instead of pulling in one direction, there might be some infighting, and a guy like Arozarena, news of that, it's going to perk everybody's ears up, and they're all of a sudden now there's going to be smiles, and it's like, fucking finally we got somebody in here, and it's a name, and that does so much wonders, because it lets your players know that you care about winning and that you're about winning, and these are the type of deals that changes the atmosphere just like that.
Well, until then, Mariners are gonna have to somehow find a way to figure out without Arozarena, because in their starting lineup, which was just posted just recently, we got Victor Robles at center field, Cal Raleigh as a number 2 hitter. Very bizarre decision. I think Polanco should be number 2 guy. Polanco is 3. Mitch Haniger is the cleanup. I also don't like that decision. Luke Raley is number 5. Vossler at 6. Garver is playing catcher, which I also don't like that idea. I mean, where's like Tyler Locklear? Like, you could just use Tyler Locklear as a DH and have Cal Raleigh be a catcher. Josh Rojas, number 8, and Dylan Moore, shortstop. If you're at the Snoqualmie Casino or at any casino, Mariners are actually still considered the favorites. I would put my money on the White Sox.
Tonight, yes.
Because
Tomorrow,
White
maybe.
Sox also have a pretty good starting rotation.
We'll see. I think the White Sox have been iffy, but we'll see, man. This is coming from Twitter or X, and this comes from Savage Depoto. And he says, neither of these deals scream all in to me. We're just used to sideways deals and Jake Lamb type players. Good deals, yes. All in, no.
I agree. This is not all in. Like, if you want to show that you're going all in, you trade for one of those high profile bats. We're talking Vlad Guerrero Jr., Pete Alonso, if you're willing to do the 2-month. Now, I would say you get Pete Alonso if you can guarantee a World Series, which you probably won't.
I don't know, man.
Jazz
I don't
Chisholm.
know, man. Well, so I'll say this. Because Randy Arozarena to me says that you're like getting to the all-in. Getting a guy like Yimi Garcia and a guy like Arozarena says that you're in that direction of going all in. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of halfway. You're kind of halfway there, and I would agree with you. Like if if they ended up with a Vlad Jr., or a Jazz Chisholm. Let's say that they traded for Jazz Chisholm and home dude, the reliever, Tanner Scott. You know what I mean? Like they got Jazz and Tanner Scott to go along with Arozarena and Yimi Garcia. So you had 2 high leverage arms to your bullpen. And you add Jazz Chisholm and Randy Arozarena. And then if they got one more bat to that, 100% you can say it was all in. You know what I mean?
Until then, it's all you can say is that's a good start.
Here's the thing. It's like the word all in, the phrase of that, it's like I'm kind of leaning in that direction because you're right. This is a very good start. They addressed 2 very big needs. And of course, with Arozarena, I don't know if you remember this, but this is a deal that's 2 years in the making. We've heard that the Mariners were interested in Arozarena 2 years ago, 2 off seasons ago. And of course, we kept hearing that, they were interested in Tampa's left-handed bats, not necessarily right-handed bats. And sure enough, they get this deal done. This is not Jake Lamb. This isn't Austin Jackson. This isn't
Chris Denorfia, Jose Offerman 2002.
Yeah, this isn't that. This is Luis Castillo on the offensive side. And again, Luis Castillo, it was that all in? No, because the Mariners didn't, they kind of neutered themselves by just staying in that area. And we saw that in the playoffs, right? We saw how offensively they were challenged in the playoffs. This is that right now, and it is imperative that they get to that next level. I would say that they're like 50%, 60% all in, which is still better than what they've been for the last year and a half. This is night and day better than what we've seen over the last year and a half. So,
would you consider these 2 trades that they made? Would you consider it at least 95 level when they got Bennis and Coleman?
I think it's better than the 95 level.
You do?
I do, because Vince Coleman, so first of all, Warren Newson and Vince Coleman were in the last years of their career. Like Vince Coleman, this was like Vince Coleman's final year, and this was like his last opportunity to play in the postseason. And it made sense for the Mariners to get him because they had an absolute wide open hole in left field. And Randy Arozarena is far and away better than Vince Coleman was when he came to Seattle. And as much as I like Norm Charlton, and Norm was very good for us in that bullpen in 95, but Yimi Garcia is also better for us now than Norm was in 95, because we already kind of have that back end closer. And this is going to be a high leverage arm that you can use in multiple different ways that you compare with Santos and Munoz. This is better than 95. This is better than 97.
Well, a lot of things are better than 97.
I'm just saying from the concept of those two trades, this is better. Now, is this better than 2002? Potentially. Because that
2002.
Yeah, when we ended up trading for Luis Castillo, 2022.
2022, come on.
Yeah, 2022.
I could see it being better than 22 at least, yeah.
Yeah, like it's kind of on that same wavelength, and in many ways it's a little bit better, because I the last thing that I want to see is the Mariners like do nothing after this, right? Like they have at least one more trade left in them. But when you put it in the context of what we did in the offseason leading into that, when we traded for Winker, and we traded for Suarez, and we traded for not Adam Kennedy, but what's his ass? Fucking Adam Frazier. When we made those trades and you add Luis Castillo to it, it's not on that level yet. Because those were actually some very good deals that we end up getting from Cincinnati all the way around. So it's almost on that level. Now, if you told me that they traded for Luis Robert, Vlad Jr., or Jazz Chisholm and Tanner Scott, 100%, then it's better than 2022. 100%.
And 95, possibly.
I think it's already better than 95.
Well, before this trade, we can all agree that 95 was the best trade deadline in Mariners history, which, by the way, I have a video of that releasing in 30 minutes.
Well, what I will say, though, is that, okay, so that's why you brought it up. You're just trying to pimp your videos. I got you now. Okay. No, I'm fucking with you. No, the thing about it is, it's like when you look at the totality of what 95 did, when they brought in Tim Belcher, they brought in
Norm Charlton,
they brought in
Andy Bennett.
Norm Charlton, Andy Bennis, they brought in Warren Newson, they brought in Vince Coleman. Like in the totality of 95, it was a very good trading deadline for the Mariners. As a matter of fact, it was the right pieces that finished off what was, I already thought in 95 was a pretty solid roster to begin with. But Woody Woodward did a very good job to plug those holes.
96 was also pretty good. It would have looked better if they at least made the playoffs, because they got hard-hitting Mark Whitten, Dave Hollins. Although Hollins costed David Ortiz.
Yeah, but by the way, David Ortiz in 96 wasn't David Ortiz. He was David Arias, and he was like very much in minor league purgatory in the Mariners organization.
He was
right?
A-.
You're right. So it's like, I hate when people bring up that trade, because it was like when the Mariners traded him, he wasn't even David Ortiz yet. And oh, by the way, he was still a raw prospect. And that's the thing. It's like, had they not traded him, does David Ortiz all of a sudden crack the Mariners lineup and then becomes what David Ortiz became? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like, probably not. So sometimes it takes trades for prospects for them to develop into what they eventually became. It was the exact same thing with Veritek and Derek Lowe. Like, I remember when we had Derek Lowe in the minor league system, and I had seen him pitch, and I was like, this dude's got a funky delivery that ends up leaving pitches out over the plate, because he just hadn't figured it out yet. And sometimes it takes another organization to take that talent and fine tune it and develop it into what it will eventually become. And that's the thing, is like Jason Veritek was never going to be the Mariners catcher. And we had Edgar Martinez at the DH spot. So there was like, they're not going to take Jason Veritek and turn him into a first baseman. You know what I mean? So it was like, it just is like like you look in the totality of some of those trades and you're like, holy shit, that's Omar Vizquel for Felix Fermin. You know what I mean? And it ends up being like, yeah, they were pivotal roles for the Red Sox in the early 2000s, but it's like, dude, they were never going to crack maybe Derek Lowe cracks our rotation. Maybe. But Veritek certainly not. You know what I mean? So it's like when I hear these David Ortiz things, I'm like, dude, like you just weren't around in the 90s. You don't understand, dude. There was like, and that's the thing. It's like David Ortiz wasn't even a first baseman. He was a DH only. And do you think David Ortiz is going to crack the Mariners 25-man roster and supplant Edgar Martinez at DH? No. And
96 also.
Yeah, and by the way, and we also had in 96, we still had Paul Sorrento at first base, right?
Paul Sorrento until 97, and then it turned into David Segui. But also, 96 also brought in Jamie Moyer, who became the longtime starter, and that was off of Darren Bragg. And the Mariners...
I was gonna say, wasn't it Darren? Didn't we trade Darren Bragg?
We did trade Darren Bragg to get Jamie Moyer, and the Mariners traded Desi Relaford to get Terry Mulholland. And funny part was, to make it even better, Mariners actually had an opportunity to get Kurt Schilling, but they didn't want to take on that contract, so they settled with lefty Terry Mulholland.
By the way, I'm a huge Terry Mulholland fan. I remember Terry Mulholland. What team do I hold on? He
was mostly on the Phillies.
Right. Yeah. I think he also played for Terry Mulholland. That's funny.
He was a Philly, a Cub, Atlanta.
Oh,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So in 2002, 2003, he played for the Indians. I remember him in an American League uniform, and I couldn't remember if it was Cleveland or Minnesota. But yeah, no, he was in Cleveland in 2002, 2003, and after a long career with the Phillies. And I remember his career in Philadelphia, and I was like, dude, Terry Mulholland. I was hyped when the Mariners got Terry Mulholland. I was like, yes. And it just turns out that, it was at the end of his career. And I was like, no.
He went 5-4.
I was hoping that Terry Mulholland would be for us what Oral Hershiser was for the Indians at the end of his career. You know what I mean? Like Oral ends up in Cleveland and damn near wins the Cy Young Award with the Indians, like in '95. And I was hoping that Mulholland would have like one of those career resurrection type seasons with the Mariners, but he's a fly ball pitcher in a fly ball park. So I was like, meh.
Would you say it's fair to say the only reason why 96 and 97 look bad to this day, only in hindsight, it is only because the Mariners, one, didn't make the playoffs in 96, and Mariners didn't win the World Series in 97, which they actually could have. Had they took care of business in Baltimore, they could have actually made it at least a series against Cleveland, because they were at least a down version of 95, much regressed version of 95.
They were better in 97 than they were in 95.
You think so? Even without Albert Bell?
Dude, that 97 Indians team, when they got to, and this is something that they did in the postseason that I don't think the Mariners could have done, which is they got to Mariano Rivera in Game 4, and that propelled them in Game 5 in the divisional series. And then, dude, they smoked the Orioles in the ALCS. And I just think that team wasn't going to get denied. But the real question is, see, this is the one thing that people talk about 2001. If we were able to get past New York, are we going to be able to get past Arizona? And the answer is no. But also, do we get past the 97 Marlins? And the answer is no. Because that Marlins team was also stacked. That was
Gary Sheffield, Bobby Bonilla.
Oh, Al Leiter.
A young Livan Hernandez.
Oh, dude, Livan Hernandez, Al Leiter.
Craig Counsell.
Edgar
Renteria.
Yep.
Moises Alou. And it was also managed by the mighty Jim Leland.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, dude, it's like there was no way. And it's like if they got past Baltimore, it's like I don't think they get past Cleveland. And there's no way that they get past the 97 Florida Marlins. That team was so good. And I got it right here. Yeah, their general manager was Dave Dombrowski again. Kevin Brown, a young Kevin Brown who went 16-8 that year with the 2.69 ERA. Alex Fernandez, who was 17-12. Al Leiter, 9-11. Tony Saunders, Pat Rapp, Livan Hernandez. Their closer was Rob Nen. there are setup guys where Jay Powell and Dennis Cook, Felix Heredia was in that bullpen. And it's like, oh, and they had a young Cliff Floyd on that team too. If you remember Cliff Floyd.
Yep.
Yeah,
and I certainly remember Tony Saunders because he's the one that broke his arm, unfortunately, in 99.
Dude, Jeff Conine was on that team. It's like they're not getting past the Florida Marlins. But, that's the crazy thing. It's like, yeah, that 97 Marlins Indians team was, they took them to the brink. As a matter of fact, they went into Game 7 in the 9th inning with a 2-1 lead before Jose Mesa coughed it up. But, there's no way the Mariners in 97 are getting past Cleveland. That team was really good. But I will say that the scope of this deadline so far has the potential of being the best in team history. I believe that. And I actually do think right now, just in the scope of need, the Mariners were able to trade for need. They got a bat that they can plant in left field, which is again better than Warren Newson and Vince Coleman, and they got a very good high leverage arm in Yimi Garcia. And now all of a sudden you take that, and he was like, if you look at Yimi Garcia and you look at his numbers, and you're like, dude, you did that in Skydome, and now you're coming to T-Mobile Park, which is 100% a pitcher's park. You know what I mean? And that, that just kind of blows it out of the water a little bit. But I'll say this, that again, it's not complete. And you and I believe Jay Trident are going to be doing a deadline roundtable show. And I'm curious to see how Jay feels about this as well too, because, I'm sure we'll talk about what we're talking about right now on that deadline show. Because this is actually kind of interesting. Like, where does this deadline fall in team history? You know what I mean? Like, certainly it was the most important in the Jerry Dipoto era, 100%. Because if he did what most fans were wanting, which was to sell and wave the white flag, that would have been it for him. So I just never bought that notion. I thought it was a loser's mentality. But the impact, right? And you can use that word. You can use impact, because these two additions definitely have impact on this club. And we're going to find out. I finally like the idea that he was able to pick up somebody like Arozarena to play with Julio Rodriguez, because Julio Rodriguez needs a Robin to his Batman. And if they end up with Luis Robert Jr. or Vlad Jr., holy shit. You know what I mean? Having those three batting two, having him hit 2, 3, 4 in the lineup, that's unbelievable.
I'm looking up all the previous trades that we can compare to, and I think we'll do more of this once we get to the long round table show. Well, I'm going to go over every single one of them, because I think let's do this, and then we'll get into the state of the team, what they must do next. But 95 was that Vince Coleman and Andy Benes. 96 was Witten, Moyer, Hollins, and Mulholland. 97 was Slocum.
By the way, 96, when we got Witten, Hollins, and Mulholland, who did we send? Who did we give away that year?
Mark Witten. Let's take a look at all of those. Yeah. I'm going to go to 1996 Mariners. I heard they were like a bunch of nobodies. It was really that Dave Hollins trade that, quote, looks bad. But I think even with a hindsight, you probably still would have done it because of the state of where the team was. It was, had the Mariners maybe re-signed Dave Hollins, maybe that would have had a different perspective. But they didn't, of course, because they let him go. And they let Mark Witten go, too. Yeah. All right, here's where we are at. So it was the 29th. It was... No. Hold on. Looking at July 30th, Darren Bragg for Jamie Moyer, Desi Relaford for Terry Mulholland, who was a Mariner, by the way, in 2002.
Yep.
Because of their depth, they got rid of Luis Sojo. They put him on the waivers, sadly.
Yep.
And they traded they traded David Ortiz to get Dave Hollins. So that was 96. And now to get Mark Witten. Roger Blanco, who was a minor leaguer, to get Mark Witten.
Okay. Roger Blanco. Yep.
And he was out of the league by 99.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even break Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. Career minor leaguer. Yep. All right, so 97 we trade Jose Cruz Jr. to Toronto for Timlin and Spoljaric. Was there another trade in 97 besides the Timlin deal?
The Slocum deal.
That's right, and we traded for
Veritek and Derek Lowe.
Yeah, Veritek and Derek Lowe. Okay, yeah.
98 doesn't count. 99 doesn't count because those were sellers' years. 2000 was to get.
In 98, we traded Randy Johnson for John Halama, Carlos Guillen, and Freddie Garcia.
99, we traded away Butch Husky, who ran into a wall, and David Segui for basically a bunch of bag of peanuts on all of them.
Okay.
I think Butch Husky.
Go ahead, Butch Husky.
I think I'm going to take a look and see what that Butch Husky trade was, because I remember the day before the Butch Husky trade, Butch Husky actually crashed into a wall when he was trying to catch the ball hit by, I think it was like Jacques Jones who hit the home run to left field. And then the very next day, Butch Husky was gone. I guess they traded him because he couldn't field and they just gave up. All right. Yeah, David Ortiz was Tom Davey and Steve Sinclair, who?
Okay.
And Butch Husky was traded to get Robert Ramsey, who was a mid-level bullpen pitcher in the 2000 team.
Right. Yeah. So and then in 2000, we signed Ricky Henderson
in May.
And then what was our deadline that year in 2000?
Al Martin.
Fuck.
And there was a rumor that the Tigers were actually trying to trade Juan Gonzalez because Gonzalez already hated Comerica Park already in his first season there. And he actually could have gone to the Mariners, but the Mariners just were not willing to trade Gil Mesh or Joel Pinheiro.
You know, the funny thing is that we also could have had Mariano Rivera.
Off of Randy Johnson. And I heard it was also off of Felix Fermin.
No, yeah. So it was Felix Fermin. So because it was in 96, right before the 96 season started. George Steinbrenner was listening to his idiots in his front office, and they were trying to tell him that Derek Jeter wasn't ready for big league baseball. So they had Brian Cashman look for a veteran shortstop who was available, and they were planning on sending Jeter down, and they were going to trade Mariano Rivera for Felix Fermin. Yeah. So 2001, no deadline.
Actually, it goes all the way from 2001 until 2014 was when they were either standing pat or they were just pure selling. And even on contending years, 2007, they did nothing.
You're forgetting the Eric Bedard trade. We were
clear buyers then. No, we're talking about deadline trades.
I know.
Oh, 06, they did actually try to go all in for Eduardo Perez and Ben Broussard.
Oh, I know, dude.
That was a buy.
And by the way, that Broussard trade was Sin-Shu Chu, right?
And Asdrubal Cabrera. And the same day of that trade, the Mariners Indians beat the Mariners 1-0 off of Shin-Soo Choo hitting the home run. So he immediately made impact.
Dude, that was when Bill Bavasi should have been fired right then and there. And it's like, dude, you're trading Shin-Soo Choo and Asdrubal Cabrera for Ben Broussard,
who was a backup first baseman for Richie Sexton.
Who was a backup first baseman. Like that was but also he was also the same guy who traded for Horacio Ramirez.
Off of Rafael Soriano.
Dude,
how did he even maintain an 8-7 record with that?
Yeah, it was, dude. Yeah, the Bavasi years were just pure Comedy Central. But I will say that, so in 2014,
Austin Jackson and Kristen Orfia.
Austin Jackson. And who did we trade for? Who did we give away for those guys?
Oh man, let's take a look at those. And so I guess we can also go into the buying years.
Yeah,
because I know the Mariners also gave up peanuts for those trades, but I was actually not happy about those trades. I was like, Austin Jackson. I think we saw Boston trading for Yoenis Cespedes.
Well, what I'm saying though is if this was Austin Jackson, like when he was with the Tigers, like in his prime, that would be something, right? But we got Austin Jackson at the end of his career. You know
Austin Jackson was 27, so he was still kind of in his prime.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say that but Austin Jackson didn't really have any solid years after his Mariner tenure. You know what I mean? It was like, no, he was like a backup. And then, so who did we trade for Austin Jackson? Do you know?
Abraham Almonte, Mr. Bad Base Running.
Okay.
And Stephen Colsheen.
Stephen Colsheen, okay.
He was a heavy career minor league guy.
And then
who
did we trade for Denorfria?
That was for Denorfria.
Okay.
And then the Mariners trading away Nick Franklin to the Tampa Bay Rays. The Mariners got Austin Jackson from Detroit.
Yeah, okay.
And Detroit also sent Willie Adams, Drew Smiley to the Rays, and David Price to the Tigers.
Yeah, so the Tigers made out great.
And Rays at least got the off-speed Drew Smiley.
Yeah.
So that
and
was
I know the Mariners later. The Mariners ended up with Drew Smiley, who never pitched for us.
And now he's still holding up.
Yeah, he's still holding up as a bullpen guy.
That was it. And then 22, and then 8 years later.
Dude, by the way, in 2016 in Dipoto's first year, as you know, because there was a mandate to get those teams to the playoffs. In 2016, did we have a deadline?
2016, they stood pat.
Okay, what about 2018?
Pat.
2017?
Pat.
Did we sell in 2019?
Well, 2019 was all sell because it was like all tank.
Right. Okay.
2020 was when they sold. That's where Austin Nola turned into Ty France and Andres Munoz, which, by the way, despite Ty France turning out terribly, that was still I still think that's a top 10 Mariners trade in history.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because Ty France gave you 2 solid seasons, including an all-star
off of a backup catcher.
Yeah, off a backup catcher. And then 2021, obviously, we sold
Kendall Graveman. I was blowing up on Facebook about that all day long because of that trade.
Yeah, but you know what's crazy? I was upset about that too because how they were playing at the time. You're wondering like Jerry Dipoto, like, are you paying attention to your big league club at the moment? Because they're kind of winning, and it's kind of like
if it was 2019 and they did that same exact trade, I'd be like, okay, fine, whatever.
Right, whatever. And then of course 2022 we get Luis Castillo.
23 sold Paul Sewald, which also made no sense. And again, if the Mariners weren't going on a streak, I would have said, okay, fine.
Right. Well, so all right. So I guess that leads to the next logical question, and I guess we have to start with from a prospect standpoint, because I think you and I both agree that this cannot be the totality of your deadline. There has to be at least another impact piece coming back to Seattle. And I guess the big logical thing is, are any prospects untouchable, or are they all in play?
I think everyone should be in play because the ones that I considered untouchable, like Felmin Celestine, I said was untouchable. Now he has injury problems all of a sudden, and I should have saw it last year because he also missed an entire season. So I think that's a red flag. Laz Montez, I love the guy. He has that Yordan Alvarez kind of body, but the man strikes out like no freaking other.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the thing. I think that you and I both agree that there is no prospects that are untouchable, but I do think that he's going to do his best. Jerry Dipoto is going to do his best to hang on to Laz Montez and
Celestine.
No, it depends on it depends.
It sounds like he does like Colt Emerson. I looked up his stat lines. It actually does look pretty solid. Like he doesn't he looks like a guy that doesn't swing at everything.
Those are the two guys that I think Baseball America and everybody agrees are like the 1A and 1B in the Mariner organization. But from a standpoint of buying, I would like to think that what he's going to do is he's going to try to dangle Cole Young out there because he's pretty much close to being major league ready. And so if you're a team like Chicago or you're a team like Toronto, the idea of resetting the right side of your infield with Cole Young and Ty Locklear right? Because if you're trading for Vlad Jr., one of the things about a guy like Felnin Celestine, on top of the fact that he's injured again, is the fact that like he's still in the developmental league. So he's years he's years away from even being remotely in a position to get a call up. And the thing about it is, it's like with Cole Young, like conceivably Cole Young can come up this year and help a team. If not next year, starting in spring training. And so, from a Toronto standpoint, like if you're going to trade the face of your franchise and you're doing it for prospects, you want prospects that are major league ready right now. And you get one with Ty Locklear. Yeah, you get one with Ty Locklear. You reset the first base position for the next 6 years, and Cole Young, who can play second base and shortstop, and you can reset the entire right side of your infield now.
And heck, why don't they just throw in Bo Bichette for craps and giggles? Because I think his value is not exactly what would have been in the last 2 years. See if you can try to leverage him over to the team.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's going to be an issue of whether or not because if you're asking for basically the two stars of their franchise, Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr., it's going to be like a 2 for 6 or a 2 for 8 deal. You know what I mean? It's going to be like one of those type of things where the Mariners end up unloading their entire top 6 of their minor league
Bedard trade on steroids.
And both of them have a year and a half left, right? So it's like you can conceivably do it with Vlad Jr., right? Or whichever one you like. I know that the thing with Vlad is it fills an immediate need, and I actually think that the Mariners kind of want to roll with Jorge Polanco.
I don't.
In the last couple weeks, his bat started to pick up a little bit, and so I think the Mariners are conceivably looking at second base. Like, well, here's the thing: if we end up with Randy Arozarena and we end up with Vlad Jr. and like maybe Michael Conforto, so we got 2 outfield bats plus an infield bat, and we can conceivably roll with Polanco at second and Rojas at third. I can see that. The crazy thing is if you're rolling the dice and you get Vlad and Bo Bichette, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, that pushes Rojas to the bench because you would have to conceivably either play Bichette at second or Bichette at third. And then you're gonna have to make a decision on Polanco playing third. You know what I mean? Or maybe they're just going to tell JP Crawford straight up, you're playing second base from now on because we just traded for Bo Bichette.
Polanco does have a very team-friendly contract, though. He does have, I believe, a team option. So it's not like the Mariners really have to do much with him anyway. But it's pretty realistic to see the Mariners trading for Bo Bichette anyway. I think Vlad Jr. is probably be the one the Mariners are gunning with the most, and I think
100%.
They are thinking that they can still make it work from what you said about Jorge Polanco and JP when he comes back, and Josh Rojas and Dylan Moore, and they're still going to try to make it work, even though it's not exactly ideal. But if at least you have Vlad Jr., then you can at least sleep at night with that.
I think what they're going to end up doing is, right now there's a need because of JP. I think JP Crawford's got a broken digit, right? He's got a fractured digit. So the question is like, how long is JP Crawford going to be out? So now you have a need at shortstop. And that's where Bo Bichette kind of comes into play because you actually have an immediate need at shortstop. And then you can figure out the logistics of the infield when JP gets back. And damn, that would be something special, right? If they ended up with Vlad and Bo Bichette and they got rid of, essentially their top 6 prospects.
Maybe it doesn't have to be like, maybe they don't have to. Maybe they can just give up any of their mid levels. Like, let's say,
no, if
you give up,
if you're
like Cole Young and Ty Locklear are going to be gone for sure in that trade.
Like, if they're trading for both Vlad and
Bo,
Vlad and Bo, that means Colt Emerson and Laz Montez are going to be 100% a part of that deal. And probably Harry Ford, that's probably going to be a part of that deal too. You would probably think that you're going to end up peeling off 4 of our top 6 prospects.
Unless Jerry can sell the idea that, well, hey, look what happened to Bo. He sucks now. So they can maybe leverage that. Because he's having an awful year.
The Toronto Blue Jays may very well want to blow this thing up, but they're not going to undersell on either of those guys. They're going to try to get max value out of both of them because, it's true. Bo Bichette has underperformed this year. That is a very true statement. But he's also Bo Bichette, and he's still young, and he's got a track record of being able to hit. And you put him in,
and he's got daddy's last name.
That too, and you're coming to Seattle, and you're putting him in a lineup with Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh, and Randy Arozarena and Vlad Jr. And now all of a sudden you're going to have a lineup that is going to have some protection there. So
well, if you could choose, who would you situationally? Well, I think everyone would choose Vlad Jr., but what do you think's like the most realistic that they'll get out of Vlad Jr. or Bo Bichette?
I think Vlad Jr., because I think those conversations have already happened, and I think they're just trying to figure out what's going to go back, what's realistic for the Mariners, and I can see a situation where they end up with Vlad Jr. and then they go and get Andy Ibanez from the Tigers, right? Who plays shortstop for the Tigers. He's not an everyday shortstop, but he's what you can plug in right now for the short term until JP gets back. And then you got a guy who crushes left-handed pitching coming off your bench. Andy Ibanez is your off the bench crushing left-handed pitching bat. That I can probably see.
How much do you think, in your opinion, that Vlad Jr. would be cost? Because I think we saw a mock trade before. I don't know if it's a realistic trade at all. I remember posting it. So it was on this guy's website. I think it was Soto Mojo website. Well, it doesn't even matter anymore. But Mariners, it was a mock trade before. It was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for Yimi Garcia. Toronto would have traded away. Mariners would have traded away Harry Ford, Michael Arroyo, Michael Morales, and Luis Seisbel. Now, maybe if you take out Yimi Garcia, I would think it's going to be Harry Ford and Michael Arroyo, or the Blue Jays would say Harry Ford and maybe like Tyler Locklear, or put in Cole Young.
Yeah, it would probably be like Cole Young, Tyler Locklear, and Harry Ford.
I mean, like that. At this point, I would do that because
100%.
It's difficult to see.
You get the rest of this year with Vlad Jr. and you get 2025 with Vlad Jr. So you get two playoff runs with Vlad Jr. before he hits the open market, and the Mariners can easily replace that in the draft. Like, this is not something that it's. I know there's going to be Mariner fans who are going to be like, "Oh my God, that's an overpay." No, it's not. No, it's not. For Vlad Jr., it's not an overpay.
I mean, I'm happy the Mariners didn't exactly have to overpay with a top 10 prospect to get Randy Arozarena.
No,
I didn't even think that was possible.
No, as a matter of fact, yeah, that was the beautiful thing about it is, they didn't have to move off any of their top prospects, and they added payroll. That's also something that you have to consider here. But yeah, no, I just think it's a situation where they're going to try to dangle Cole Young first, because of his immediacy, right? Like if we were trying to get Nico Horner, that would be something that you would probably have to trade, because that resets Chicago's second base position immediately, or maybe even a guy like Ryan Bliss, you know what I mean, in some type of deal for a guy like that. But either way, man, it's going to be something along those lines, because Vlad Jr. obviously still has the star power, and he's rebounded on this season. You know what I mean? That is, that's something where the Blue Jays, like, if they blow it up, you're going to have to pay a high premium for a dude like Vlad Jr. And that's where I think the Mariners are in the driver's seat here, because the Houston Astros don't have the prospect capital that Seattle has in order to land a dude like Vlad Jr. Same thing with Pete Alonso. I've heard that name linked to the Houston Astros, and the first question I have is, like, who are the Astros going to trade? Right? Like who do they have in their minor league organization that resets the Mets position right away, like what the Mariners can do? That's why having a dude like Tyler Locklear is so valuable, because he's major league ready right now. You know what I mean?
And he's already shown his upside that he can capably hit. It's just that he just strikes out too dang much, but that's typical when you call up a prospect in the Mariners organization anyway.
Correct. Well, and then like especially in Toronto, putting a fastball first hitter in a Sky Dome is going to pay unbelievable dividends. But I just think that if that ends up happening, and by the way, this is coming from the Soto Mojo podcast. If they go get guys we really want, Vlad, Robert Jr., Diaz, etc., y'all got to be ready for what that return will look like. At least one, if not two, top 10 guys. Balancing the farm is really important, but this is what prospects are for. Not everyone will make your squad 100%. 100%.
They nailed that in the head easily because, like, maybe the best case scenario we get out of Las Montez with the way the organization runs, the best case you might get out of him, you might get 2023 Teoscar Hernandez. And I don't think that's what you want out of Las Montez and his upside.
Correct. I'll say this about Yandy Diaz. Yeah, probably one, if not two. But for a guy like Luis Robert Jr. or Vlad, both Chicago and Toronto are going to sell high on either of them, and that means you're going to have to pony up. I just think that there's a difference between the two. But yeah, I by the way, getting a Yandy Diaz would also be unbelievable. Because the Mariners have prospects that Tampa Bay really, really covets. Yandy Diaz would be interesting though. First base, huh? All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. Are we coming back tonight at 8?
I won't know until the next hour, so we'll keep updated.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll do we'll do a game covering a very boring Mariners offense, at least until Randy Arozarena is available.
Oh, dude, it's the Seattle Rainiers. You got to dig it, right? So, all right. So we will be either back tonight or we will be back early next week, or sometime this weekend on a broadcast. But until then, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. Make sure you hit the like buttons, because that's very important. Same with your subscribe buttons. I want to thank Rooftop Sports for rooftopping it on the show today. And until next time, go Mariners.
Go Mariners, and